Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, joined by the one, the only, Vincent Goodwill of Yahoo Sports. What's up, V? How you doing?
What's going on, Sherrod? How you doing, man?
Can't complain. I mean, I'm doing good. I'm not doing like Celtics good, but I'm doing pretty good, though. As Vinnie knows, you all know the Celtics, the 2024 NBA champions, bringing that Larry O'Brien trophy back to Boston. Got the duck boats ready to roll out any minute now in Boston as the celebratory continues for the Boston Celtics, bringing home their 18th NBA banner and all that good stuff. And Vinny, as someone who I know was there at the games, just what were your impressions of the Celtics, as they made this run through the NBA regular season and ultimately were the last team standing?
I mean, part of it was a math equation, right? Like, we're going to take more threes than you, and that part can be really demoralizing if you think about it. Like, I compare it to almost, they're playing well, you're playing well. You're making threes, they're making twos. They feel like they're playing well, and all of a sudden your lead goes from 5 to 12, and they can't figure out why. Like, that mentally, does something to people. And I felt like Boston was more committed to being themselves and playing like themselves than any other team this year. Like, that contributes to the net rating. Top 5 offense, top 5 defense, one of the best offenses we've ever seen, even though it didn't necessarily look like it. And I just think when you have a 64-win season and nobody gets close to 60, that says a level of consistency. That speaks to a level of identity. And then going through the playoffs, losing only 3 games, you can say a lot about who they didn't play, but we've seen plenty of teams trick around against, undermanned ball clubs. So I don't take anything necessarily away from the run. I think that they were as impressive from day one to the end of the season as any team in the league has been over the past few years. And I give Joe Mazzulla a lot of credit because he...
Wait, you say that again? What?
I know, crazy, right? Crazy, right? They used to call me Crazy Joe. Now they call me Batman. No, you know what I mean? Like, I give Joe Mazzulla a lot of credit because you never saw any wavering belief in those players. And I think throughout the season, even with the best players, even with the best teams, the coach's voice kind of wanes. The coach's plan kind of goes awry a little bit. I never saw any deviation from that, and maybe it was some of his quirks, or maybe it was just the way that he was a hard driver and maybe hard to get sometimes, and you never knew what way he was going to come into the building. But I felt like the team was as committed to him as he was committed to the team. And when you have something like that, you might have something really special.
That felt like an apology cam moment right there, V. I felt that
apology.
I felt the love there.
What am I apologizing for?
Well, one of the things, V, I wanted us to just kind of, again, just go a little bit back before we get too far into the future, into the present. In that game 5, you had Tatum with 31, 11, and 8. Jaylen Brown had 21 and 8, and 6, which is crazy as it sounds, was a pretty average game for Jaylen Brown, which is crazy. Jrue Holiday had a big game. Luka did his thing. Kyrie, once again, no show when it mattered. And the voting came out for NBA Finals MVP. I believe you were one of the voters, correct?
Yes.
Now, the voting was 7-4. Then and when they said 7-4, I was thinking like, wow, Tatum won it by more than I thought he would. And then they were just like, nah, it was JB. You voted for Jaylen Brown.
Yes, I did.
Tell me what separated your vote for him versus voting for Tatum. And again, full disclosure and transparency, my boy, our colleague, Gary Washburn, once again found himself going against the grain. He voted for Tatum.
You're not surprised by Gary Washburn doing that. No, and I put it like this. I think for me, it was an easy choice, but I could understand why someone, I think it was Malika, I think it was Doris Burke. I know Gary was one. I forgot who the 4th person was that voted for Tatum. I don't think it was like out of the question that someone votes for Jason Tatum. But for me, Sherrod, I didn't look at game 5 as this critical, game. Mm-hmm. I looked at it as you're up 3-1. Like, the series is pretty much in hand. Like, we know who the best team is. We know how we got here. Now, how we got here was Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was the guy who was defending Luka Doncic 94 feet, tiring him out, beating him up, getting him frustrated, and then carrying a load on offense. Like, it's very rare that you see someone guard the other team's best player, and then he's responsible for being 50% of your offense on given nights. You know what I mean, Sherrod? And not just scoring, but having to initiate offense. It was some of those games where he had 8 assists. Like, we didn't know that Jaylen Brown could pass the ball, let alone dribble with his left hand. You know what I mean? And when I think about the moments of this series, the moments where the series hung in the balance, I thought of Jaylen Brown. I thought of Jaylen Brown in game 3 in that third quarter where the Celtics took that 20-point lead. That was Jaylen Brown's tour de force. That was where, I'm driving down the lane and I'm dunking on somebody to give us a 20-point lead. And then when the game was hanging in the balance, when Dallas made that huge run in the fourth quarter, who made the 2 jumpers to sort of give Boston the breathing room? It was Jaylen Brown. So while I'm not taking anything away from Jason Tatum's 31 and 11 in the clincher, it was the clincher. Now, if the clincher's a game 7, all right, cool. But if the clincher's game 5 and you're up 3-1, there's only so much weight that I can give that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And the thing that surprised me, the reason why I thought Tatum was going to win, because I agree with you. I thought if you're looking at the Eastern Conference Finals, excuse me, the NBA Finals in its totality, Jaylen Brown to me was a kind of a no-brainer. But I thought that he was the absolute no-brainer MVP after the first 3 games. Game 4, they all kind of sucked. But
Right.
I thought Tatum sucked the least among them. And because of that, he had maybe narrowed the gap a little bit between him and JB. And the way he finished in game 5, I thought that might have been, in the eyes of the voters, enough to put him over the top. Because you know how it works. So oftentimes these votes, it's not about who had the best stretch of play. It's recency bias.
Right.
Where whoever impressed me it's what have you shown me today versus what have you shown me over your whole entire body of work. So I give y'all judges props on this one because I really thought that y'all were going to get absolutely captivated and seduced by that game 5 performance because Jaylen Brown was him in this series. And you know, and you've been around the league long enough. You've seen these 2 guys do their thing. Can you just give just a national perspective on how the narrative between these 2 could never play together or win together? How has that shifted because they won a title? I mean, and is it shifted at all? I mean, do you still think people are going to be hating on them, thinking that they can't play together?
I think they think that. I think they are so conditioned to believe that haters are going to be out there. Like you saw it with the 2004 Pistons. Once they won the title, they believed that everybody was against them for the next 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And to some degree, it was true. But to a large degree, once you win a championship, you don't have to apologize for it. You are a champion, and nobody can take that away from you. And it sounds very, very simple, but it's a fact that you can't say, or nobody can say, you haven't done it. And Tatum and Brown have proved together, 27 and 25 is their ages. Like they're in the prime ages. I think the questions that we had was, who's the super athlete here? Who's the guy that's going to get to the bucket, blow by you, and make things so easy for everybody else? Neither one of those guys is that guy. And as we saw during the finals, Jason Tatum had some moments where, man, he relied way too much on that step back. You know what I mean? He had way too much confidence in those things that sort of made us cringe. But the fact that both of those guys defensively were so committed, like I think that's the thing that goes undersold in today's game, is that they were both so committed to the defensive end. That sets the tone for everybody else. And Jrue Holiday, of course, adds to that. And Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford adds to that. It's a group effort all the way around. But I go back, Sherrod, to Kevin Durant. And I go back to Kevin Durant in 2022, I believe. Maybe one of them trade demands. I feel like he done had a million trade demands. Remember Kevin Durant had a trade demand out of Brooklyn, and Boston was one of the teams. And the player that the Celtics were going to have to give up in that was going to be Jaylen Brown. Right. And I felt like the fact that Brad Stevens did not do that, did not initiate conversations, did not, fully invest himself in a pursuit of Kevin Durant. That was the biggest show of confidence in a guy like Jaylen Brown that, hey, if I'm not trading you for Kevin Durant, that means I value you. That means I believe in you. That means no matter what the world says, I believe that you two can do it together. Because make no mistake, if someone was going to have to go, it was going to be Jaylen Brown. It wasn't going to be Jason Tatum. So the fact that they didn't give him up for what many considered to be a top 5, top 3 player in the game at that particular moment, that's the ultimate vote of confidence that nobody can take away. And I think that kind of elevated the Boston Celtics internally, the fact that Brad Stevens didn't go there. And even though they lost that game 7, that ugly series last year to Miami, I still felt like the plan never really wavered, that we can switch around all these parts, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams III, all these other players, but the guys who are going to stay will be Tatum and Brown.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. Get in on the daily action with your friends. Become part of the PrizePicks community today. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, their stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Now, here's something that you can think about. What you can think about here with PrizePicks, here's an example of something you could. This is the whole idea behind the concept. Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 3-pointers made, and Breanna Stewart for more than 23 points. See, it's that simple. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
And along those same lines, Vinny, it felt as though for Jaylen, he finally found a moment or something he could point to that reflected the level of confidence and faith he has in himself. Like, it's one thing to believe you got game and that you are a great player, but it's another when an organization, they don't just tell you that, they show you that love. They show you that love by turning down an opportunity to add a legitimate first ballot Hall of Famer who still got a lot of juice left in the tank, and then just like, you know what? We believe in you more, Juice. You our guy. You're going to be part of this championship building block that we're trying to put together here. And to Jaylen's credit, I think it helped him lock in even more so. Because now all of a sudden, he wasn't just playing with a chip on his shoulder because no one believed in him. He was playing with a chip on his shoulder because this organization has said, we believe in you in a way that no one else will. Because we're literally we're passing on an opportunity to add a guy in Kevin Durant who I think we almost agree is a generational talent. We're not going to see a 7-footer who can shoot like Kevin Durant do the things that he do in our lifetime. And the Celtics are like, that's great, but we got Jaylen, and that's going to get it done. And he rewarded that confidence with a tremendous showing in the finals. But the one thing I'm curious to get your take on, though, because it's something that has always been part of the Jaylen Jason debate. It's who's the alpha? Who's the number one? Who's the number two? And it seems that we all just kind of crown Tatum as that guy. But there might be some changes in the kingdom based on what we saw in the finals, or at least the perception of how things are. What's your take on just that whole Tatum, Jaylen, who's number one, who's number two? Doesn't even matter. What's your take on that?
I think when you look at whose game has risen over the past couple of years, it's clearly Jaylen Brown's, right? Jason Tatum started off, even though he came in a year later, Jason Tatum started off at a higher starting point. You know what I mean? Like Jaylen Brown maybe averaged around, 7 points or something like that his rookie year. Jason Tatum came into the league balling on a really good team. You know what I mean? He came in and fully established himself. Now, I think Jason Tatum is the better player. I clearly believe that Jaylen Brown was the dominant force in the Eastern Conference Finals, even though I didn't have a vote in the Eastern Conference Finals and the Finals. I think Jaylen Brown's personality is more forceful, is more outgoing, is more, you feel him take up more oxygen in the room. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like some guys take up oxygen in the room and you be like, man, would you shut the hell up? I don't think that's Jaylen Brown. I just think he has a more assertive, dominant, take charge personality, while Jason Tatum is a little bit more, I won't say laid back, but he's more lead by example. You know what I mean? He's more, I'm going to show you more than I tell you. But I still think that Jason Tatum is the better player. I just think that Jaylen Brown has raised his game to the point that now we don't have those questions about him as much anymore.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things you kind of alluded to earlier when you talked about just how impactful this Celtics team was at both ends of the floor, it's raised some questions. And now that they won a championship, obviously they enter a different kind of conversation. Like no longer are they, yeah, they had a pretty good year. They're a champion, and they've entered that champion discussion about, just, who had what the best single season champion. And when you look at their offense, you look at how, as you pointed to, their two best players are sold out in every sense of the word on being great defensively. Do you look at this Celtics team, what they were able to do this year, as one of the best single season teams you've seen? When you look at how it ended, when you look at how it began, all the stuff that went on in between, do you put them in that category as one of the better individual single season squads that you've seen?
I guess it depends on what the time stamp is. You know what I mean? How far am I going back? You know what I mean? Am I going back 10 years? Am I going back 20 years? How far
Let's say
am I
the
going
last decade. Let's keep it simple. Last decade.
Okay. I think the greatest team or the best team that I've seen in the last decade is the 2017 Warriors. That's the first Kevin Durant team. I say that with no equivocation because I think that's one of the three best teams I've ever seen in my absolute lifetime. I don't think anybody's beating them, right? So there's no shame in that. But do I think that they could beat or at least compete with I think more than compete, the 2020 bubble Lakers? Yeah. Can they, play with the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks of, Giannis and that Jrue Holiday? Yeah. Can they compete with the 2022 Golden State Warriors that they lost to? Absolutely. You know what I mean? I think you put them in the same strategy. Now where it gets tricky is what happens if you put them against the 23 Denver Nuggets and that big joker down there. You know what I mean? Right. That's the one guy you have nothing for. But when you consider at the beginning, I said, hey, this is a math equation. They had a game, I want to say where they took 46 threes and 36 twos. When you tilt the scales like that, when you make the game a game of we're going to take way more corner threes, we're going to do drive and kick, and we're going to bend you until you break, they may impose their will on most of these regular season teams that I just named of the past five or 6 years since, we've had 5 or 6 champions in the past 5 or 6 years. I would say they rank right up there with them because they're just as committed to being who they are as those other teams. I would say the Nuggets are probably the team that would give me the most pause.
Yeah, and the fact that they're on that short list says a lot about them because there's been a lot of great champions through the years, and I'm with you on that. That Golden State team was sick. I mean, that was like one of them, like when a video game becomes reality, that's what you get.
Game cheating. That game was cheating.
Exactly. For sure. But I do like the fact that this team, and I've said this many times. I mean, playing them was like playing basketball whack-a-mole. The minute you hit one of them fools, you got another one popping up and another one after that. You never could really get comfortable playing these guys, even when you beat them. I mean, like when Miami beat them in the playoffs, that one game, it was the best shooting game Miami franchise had ever had from three-point range. And you look at the games that they lost, at least one or two players had the best game of their life. Nebhard for Indiana. No one really knew who he was, couldn't spell his name, let alone who the hell he was. He had the game of his life. And you look at Dallas. I mean, you had cats who, again, stepped.
Derek Lively hitting corner threes.
Which, by the way, that corner three was the first one he hit. Forget corner three, a three-pointer. That was the first one of his NBA career. Of his freaking career. He hit that bad boy in the first quarter. So I thought they posed major problems, and you had to play a damn near flawless game to beat them once. And I guess that was why I thought they were going to be the champions, because you had to play damn near perfect to beat them. You're not going to play damn near perfect 4 times.
No.
In a limited period of time and expect. And even when you play, like they lost or they won some games like against Indiana. Indiana played after 4 games. Indiana probably should have been up 2-1, 3-1, something like that. But they made the plays to get them over the hump. And again, I think that as time moves on, if this group can put together 1 or 2 more championships, I do think we're going to talk about them in the same way that we talk about the Warriors, the same way we talk about those, those mid-'80s Celtics teams, the same way we talk about the Lakers back in the Magic era, because they have the building blocks to be great. And the other thing too, and Vinny, this is the last point on this one, and we'll move on. But when I think about the great all-time great teams, the one thing they all have in common, no matter what style of play they play, was they got a bunch of future Hall of Famers rocking with them. And the Celtics team, you're gonna have Tatum. You're probably gonna have Brown. Now I got the NBA Finals MVP. That's the Chauncey Billups rule. I'm gonna call it the Chauncey Billups rule. So Jaylen pretty much gonna get in there now.
Yeah, I think the question is, are you Hall of Famers because you're champions, or are you Hall of Famers?
I think
you know what I'm saying.
I think they're gonna have 2 or 3 that are gonna be because they're just Hall of Famers, and you're gonna get a couple in there because they're champions. Like
they're gonna get in. Yeah, Jrue Holiday's gonna get in because he's a champion.
Exactly.
Al
Chauncey Billups got in because he was a champion.
Yeah.
Right. And that's fine. That means at some point you elevated your game to where you were one of, if not the best player in the most important stretch of play of the entire season and maybe of your career. I mean, Michael Cooper's going to be in the Hall of Fame, which I thought I'd never see that day. And I'm still a little queasy about that one. Not gonna lie.
I don't feel good about that one. No,
I need to pop a couple tones before I can really eloquently speak on that one, because that one,
there's things that we can say that we're not gonna say on this here airways. That's all we're gonna say. We're gonna
keep it classy. We're gonna keep it
very classy.
Absolutely.
The NBA Finals have finally arrived and will once again be one of the hottest tickets in sports. You want to be there and not have to mortgage the family home or take a second job to do so, right? Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. That's a huge get when it comes to the NBA Finals, which will start in Boston for Games 1 and 2. Those tickets are going to be super pricey, so waiting to the last minute and take advantage of the Game Time app makes a ton of sense. Here in Boston, every season is sporting season, so for me, the Game Time app makes it super easy to find tickets for just about every sport in my area, which is great this time of year when family or friends pop into town at the last minute and you're scrambling for something to do that won't break the bank, like, getting tickets to the NBA Finals. Game Time has you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
But we touched on this earlier, Vinny, about just a little bit about Tatum, Jaylen, Joe Mazzulla, but I wanted to talk about some of those others. And you mentioned one of those guys, Jrue Holiday. How is Jrue Holiday being viewed now? Because people don't really, I think, do a deep dive on guys like him. Jrue Holiday was one of the best players in the country when he was coming out of high school. He's always been a top tier point guard in the eyes of his peers. And it seems that when he got to the NBA, he became a good player that just kind of got lost in the sauce with a lot of great ones at his position. What has this championship, do you think, done to the Jrue Holiday narrative going forward?
I don't know if it's done anything, because I feel like he's always been respected, and he's always been a guy that you wanted on your team. And if you didn't have him on your team, he was going to give you a bad night. You know what I mean? Like that. Like he's like a cornerback who's just going to travel, and you trying to get away from him. And next thing you know, you lining up and he's standing across from you, staring at you in the face, and you're like, "Shh, I can't get away from this guy."
Right.
I think the beauty of this Celtics team is that if you needed Jrue Holiday to be your second best player, like the Milwaukee Bucks did, the Milwaukee Bucks needed him to be their second best player behind Giannis. That's where they came up short. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't have the most sterling playoff performances post 2021, mind you, right? They depended heavily on him. But in Boston, he could be their fourth best player. And there's a huge difference between being your second best player, which means you got to bring it every night. Like, you have to be 100% balls to the wall, both ends of the floor every night, and being your fourth best player, which means, wait, there's 3 guys better than me on this team. That means that I can do what I do in this basically puts us over the top as opposed to us sort of just keeping us from capsizing. And I think he's in a perfect situation, especially at his age. He's been in the league since 2009. Like, we assume these guys are going to play forever. You know what I mean? And these guys, it's incumbent upon teams to find players at the right points in their career. And Jrue's at the right point of his career where his ego isn't going to be so inflated that he's going to be disrespected by being the fourth best player. He's going to plug and figure stuff out. And then, yeah, Porzingis is out. Okay, I'm your third best player. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing. And I think he can handle that weight. And I think he was very comfortable with Brown and Tatum being the headliners and him basically hounding you on defense, figuring out how to exploit the spread floor on offense, and figuring out pretty much how do I fit in on this veteran ball club. And I think he got certified in 2021. I think he cemented himself this year.
Yeah, and the thing, I go back to something Derek White said, a few weeks ago, and about how when Jrue came in, Derek was like, he could easily have come in big time and us saying, yeah, I got a championship, listen to me, do what I say because I know what I'm talking about. And he was just trying to get in where he fit in. And that for the players was just like, oh, he's like us. He's just like us. He's just trying to get that chip and do whatever he has to do in order to make that happen. It's very unusual to see a player with his skill set, his accomplishments come into a situation where you had something that they clearly wanted. They wanted that championship wisdom that you bring to the table. And for him to just be like, I got that, but I'm not just going to slap it in your face and drown you with it. I'm going to give it to you how you need it. And if you need me to do a little something different, I'm going to do a little something different. And the other thing too about Jrue, I didn't realize this until like actually standing next to him and talking to him. The dude is big. Jrue is low key jacked.
Yeah.
Yes, and he may have pound for pound the strongest core of anyone in the NBA. To me, the moment where it really hit me was when they're playing Indiana. Miles Turner gets the ball on the block, and Jrue switches over on him because he was wide open. In a matter of 3 seconds, Miles Turner went from the block to out of bounds. He literally got his ass moved from the block out of bounds. How in the world does a 6'3", 6'4" guard move a 6'10" center who Miles Turner ain't no weakling. We ain't talking about Darko Milicic 2.0. We talking about a guy with some meat on his bones. And I saw Joel Embiid have trouble getting to the spots when Jrue was on him. And I'm thinking like, damn, he could probably do this all the time if he really needed to, but he doesn't. They don't need that from him. And his ability to recognize when he needed to be that dude and when he just needed to kind of sit back in a cut and chill was great to see. And the other guy I wanted to talk to, and then we can move on from it, is your boy, Kristaps Porzingis. Full confession, this would be the apology cam moment for me. I did not think he would be as helpful to them as he was. I thought defensively that he would be trash. I thought that offensively he would not fit in because he'd want to have more of a role. And yet he comes in and he's just like, I'll be your third or fourth best player. I'm cool with that. A role that he's never been asked to play before. He's always been either that guy or next to the guy. And it was clear to me, and I think to many people, he ain't built to be that guy. And I look at a guy like Kyrie Irving, who, again, incredibly talented, but it's not a coincidence that the best versions of Kyrie we've seen, there's been a LeBron or a Luka in the building. And Kristaps, and again, no hating on him, but when you're getting paid like face of the franchise money and they're asking you to be the third option, I can't be mad at you. Well,
not just that. He was asked to make it work in Dallas with Luka. That clearly didn't work, whether it was on the floor or personality issues or whatever it was. Like, okay, I can't be 1A or 1B rather. In New York, we saw what happened there as a young guy trying to, grow into that spot. It didn't happen there. Then you start losing and you go to Washington where you're balling, but it doesn't matter. I think that's why nobody cares. So the fact that you could get over yourself as you've played all these different roles at this point in your career. Like, I think if this had happened 3 or 4 years ago, you get a different Kristaps Porzingis. Maybe you get a better player. Maybe you get a healthier player, but you don't get a better fit because maybe he's trying to elbow room his way into some level of hierarchy. But because he's been at all those other different stages, Sherrod, he was okay with playing the role. And, like I know in Boston, there are 2 fan favorites, Kristaps Porzingis and Peyton Pritchard.
RVC, damn it. I'm gonna let you slide. I'm gonna let you slide as my boy Joe Mazzulla would do. He'd let you slide. I'm gonna let you slide with
Did
that.
Joe let Joe didn't let me Joe created
Nah,
a firestorm.
but now y'all worked it out though. Y'all worked it
Yeah, we
out.
fine. Yeah, we fine. Fine.
Yeah.
I
Well,
wonder did he take Juneteenth off?
I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I'm leaving on this note. Before we go though, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, obviously the Celtics, they're the champs. Everyone is going to be gunning for them, next season. Who are the biggest threats you think to the Celtics in the East? And I know that, teams still can, rejigger their rosters and all that, but just based on how teams are assembled at this moment, who do you think presents the biggest threat to them in the East?
I'm very curious what the New York Knicks do,
Mm,
right? Because I feel like if you have the wings to keep up with Boston, like now it's becoming the wings league, where
mm,
whether it was Kawhi Leonard in his prime or Kevin Durant in his prime or LeBron in his prime, now you got two 26 or 26 and 28 or whatever their ages are going to be. You have to find guys who A can defend them and B guys who can attack them. So what if that's OG Anunoby plus one? You know what I
mm.
mean? In New York with the Knicks. Like I don't trust the Philadelphia 76ers because I don't trust their makeup, right? Now, granted, I didn't trust the Boston Celtics makeup to some degree, Sherrod. So maybe they follow the same blueprint, but they've never gotten as close as the Celtics have gotten.
Mm.
Here's a team that I think the Celtics should perpetually be checking their rearview mirror for. Those dudes in Miami. Like
Ooh,
they just find a way to get stuff going. They just find a way to get a guy or get some guys that will play hard and play above their heads. I would not be surprised if next May we are back doing the same dance of Miami and Boston at some point in the playoff series. We're trying to figure out who the best team is, and that team that emerges winds up going to the finals.
uh, again.
I mean, who's saying no to South Beach?
Well, the Celtics did. I mean, where did they go after they won the championship? Miami for a day. So there you go. There you go. What about the Western Conference, Vinny? Who do you see as being a team to keep? Because it seems like there's quite a few teams to be on the lookout for.
Yeah, I think in the West, I think the natural thought is, oh, Minnesota's going to figure it out because they've gone through it. But usually you see teams take steps back before they take steps forward. And they got a salary cap thing that they got to figure out maybe with Carl Towns. I still think that big joker in Denver, I am afraid of him. Ain't no matchup for him. You're gonna have to pray. Like that's the matchup. Like what
Mhm.
what do you do against Nikola Jokic? Pray. What's the prediction? Pain. You know what I mean? That is Nikola Jokic. So until otherwise, I still think he's the best player in the game. I still think he's the most immovable force and object in the game. So if I'm going in the Western Conference, that's the guy that I'm looking at. Maybe Oklahoma City, but I still think they're a little bit young and a little bit light in the pants.
Yeah, they're trying to, I think, shore some things up. Obviously, moving some pieces around. They looks like they're going to be trading for Alex Caruso from Chicago, sending out Josh Giddey, which there are too many reasons to get into at this point on an episode why they should be moving on from Josh Giddey. But the Celtics, they're going to be they're going to be trouble for teams next year. I mean, basically, the owner Whit Grousbeck, he said we're bringing the band back together. So that means Derek White is probably going to get his bread extension. Tatum, no brainer, he's going to get the super max. And then again, you're going to be looking at a very similar team that'll be a year older, but basically not necessarily more wear and tear because the way they built this team, they could withstand pretty much any type of roster or lineup you throw out there. They can go big, they can go small, they got versatility. But if there's one thing you would like to see the Celtics add, though, what would that one thing be, Vinny?
Hmm. Uh, I guess maybe some Horford insurance because I
Mm,
feel like even though he's coming back, how long can you keep depending on this dude to figure this thing out?
right.
You got Porzingis who's probably going to undergo surgery. You got Horford who's a bit older. So if I would say count on anything, unless you think Xavier Tillman and Luke Cornett are going to figure things out, I would say bringing in an additional big who you can depend on for 20 games or for 15
Mm.
minutes a night if you want to preserve both of those guys. That's what I would say.
Yeah, because I mean, both of those guys are free agents this year and may get, bigger money elsewhere. The Celtics obviously have some financial constraints when you look at the back end of their roster, because
Right,
Tatum
right.
gonna get his check. That's a given. Derek White's gonna get his bread as well. But other than that, they locked up pretty much everyone else for multiple years, except for those guys at the end of the bench. So it'll be interesting to see, definitely. But the Celtics will definitely be in the mix, and the same can be said for my good friend Vincent Goodwill Jr. of Yahoo Sports. Vince, once again, thanks for coming on the Big Three NBA podcast. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Thanks
Hope you
again for
enjoy the
having
rest
me.
of your off season and
What
all that
off
good
season?
stuff.
What off season? Ain't no
I hope you had a
off
good Juneteenth. Like my boy
No, Monty
Joe.
Williams got fired on Juneteenth. A black man got his freedom, which meant I had to work.
You know what though? There's 65 million reasons why I'm not shedding a tear for Monty Williams.
That's why I say he got his freedom on Juneteenth.
I mean, we're gonna cut you a $65 million check to go away. You know, I got one word. Bye.
See ya.
Vincent Goodwill, Yahoo Sports, my friend. Good talking with you.
Appreciate you, man.
I'll talk to you.